Recording. Welcome everyone to the Trade Show Makeover podcast. I am Diana Guerin. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Trade Show Makeover. And I am so excited today to have our guest, Trade Show Guy. Who else would you have on a podcast about trade shows? Tim Patterson. And he's really the expert on how to do these kinds of shows. So I think we're going to get a lot of real value today. For over 25 years, he's been on the air. He does his own Monday morning podcast, which I'll let him tell you about. And welcome, Tim. I'm also really excited to share some of the books you've written, but mostly we're going to give the audience today some really solid tips about the things that you may not be thinking about with your trade show marketing that he's found makes a real difference for his clients. So welcome, Tim.
Thank you very much, Diana. It's a pleasure to be here and to be on your program. Thanks for having me.
Well, so tell me a little bit about your books. You have a couple books that I'd love to just highlight really quickly. And stay tuned, because at the end of the program, there will be a way for you to win the superhero book. So spoiler alert. But also, I'd love for people to know how to engage with you on your podcast as well, or to subscribe to your podcast.
Well, I've written a couple of books that have to do with trade show marketing that are available on Amazon. One is called Trade Show Success. And the other is called Trade Show Superheroes and Exhibiting Zombies, which grew out of a list. I have a blog that is 10 years old this month, and which astonishes me. But I've been blogging for 10 years now, and this book is actually a collection of lists that have appeared on the blog and edited down and updated and things like that. So it's a fun book. You can read a chapter, you can read one list and be done. Well, you don't have to sit there and read the whole thing through, but fun book to write. And
so I think this is what an exhibiting zombie looks like at the base.
Yeah. Well, there are one of the blog posts was the top 10 superheroes, that you find on the trade show floor, and I just had fun with that. And I don't know where a year or so later I came up with the zombies that you find on the trade show floor. So that's where it all came from. It's really fun.
Good. So tell us a little bit about your podcast and where to find it.
Well, the podcast kind of grew out of my history in radio. I got into radio as a teenager and right out of school, and never looked back. I did a couple years of college and went into radio, did that for 25 years, and then transitioned into the trade show world. And I actually had a podcast back in 2002 and 3 and 4 at the first job I had, but this is before podcasting was a thing. I just recorded people and put it on our website. And then when podcasting came around, I did another one, but that stopped. But about 2 years ago, I thought I'm going to do a very concentrated, focused one every Monday and tear into kind of a topic that has to do with business and event marketing. It doesn't always have to be trade shows or events, but mostly centers on that. And I interview people. I don't have to interview people, but sometimes I just do one that's just me holding forth on some topic. It's a lot of fun. I post both the video and the audio on my blog, TradeshowGuyblog.com. And this month, it's the second year wrapping up, and I'm moving into my third year in January doing this every Monday. And I'm like, wow, it's 100 episodes plus. It's great. It's fun.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah. So listen up, everyone. Tim knows on this stuff and can make a real difference for what you're up to. So as we kind of get digging in on this, what is one thing that people mostly aren't doing for their trade show marketing that if they were, it would really level them up and give them more opportunities to generate qualified leads?
Well, it's funny because I work with a lot of clients that do trade show marketing. That's what my company, Trade Show Guy Exhibits, does. But I think the biggest challenge is that they're not as organized as they'd like to think they are, which means to me that they're looking at, if they need a new booth, for instance, which is what we work with them on, they're looking at that way too late in the game, and everything is rushed. And so that means if you're rushing that part of it, everything else kind of follows by the wayside. Pre-show marketing, setting up appointments, all that stuff. So organization and knowing your timeline, I think, is probably the most critical thing to having a good execution on the trade show floor. Obviously, there's a lot of things that need to go into what happens on the floor itself and the follow-up. We can talk about that. But organization, planning, knowing your timeline, and having those conversations with the vendors if you need something from them, whether it's scheduling installation and dismantle, whether it's designing and fabricating a new booth, whether it's updating your graphics on your current booth. Unless you have done this for a few years and you know what time it takes to work with all those vendors, and then you build in a week or two padding time to make sure that for shipping and whatnot, can sneak up on you, because those trade show dates are like, objects in the mirror that they're not going to move. They're larger than you think.
They're closer than they appear.
They're closer than you think. And so, I think organization and planning is probably the key to success, and knowing that if you've got a show in 6 months, you've got a few things to do right now. You don't have to do it all right now, but you've got a few things to do now. You got a few things to do next month, and so on and so forth. And you just build that timeline as you get closer to the show.
That's fantastic. Yeah, timeline is critical. So at least 6 months in advance is a really good time to be starting
especially the bigger shows, the big expos. Yeah, I think you need to know what is going on, especially the ones that have 70 or 80,000 attendees and 3,500 exhibitors. You're going to be a part of that. You want to be able to have your act together when you show up on the floor.
Yeah, it's really great, especially, with the investment. It really deserves your time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So speaking of, sort of being prepared, what are the things, what are the most critical things that a trade show staffer should know about the trade show?
Well, I think a lot of companies will just send people to a show saying, oh, you'd like to go to the show? Yeah, okay. Well, we'll send Susie from Human Resources or whatever, that don't really know what the show is about. They just show up. And I think that's probably less than it used to be, because it is so critical, and people are getting hip to that you need to train your trade show staff. And I think training is probably one of the most crucial things you can invest in. You can have an okay booth. Everything else is kind of okay. But if you have a staff that you've trained that knows exactly what they're doing when they get there, boy, that is really going to pay off. And I think the investment in having someone come in and train them is critical. How to interact with visitors, how to ask engaging questions. What does it take to qualify a lead and collect information? You're really trying to find out a handful of things, like does this person standing in front of my booth use what you're selling, whether it's a product or service? Do they are in the market for making a purchase? When might that be? Who's the decision maker? And are they prepared to spend the money? So once you've done all that, you've qualified them. Yeah. And I think that's the most critical thing. And we can talk about the follow-up as part of that. But I think that having that conversation and asking those questions, not just kind of meandering through like, oh, how you doing? Nice to see you at the show. Are you in the industry? What do you do? Who do you work for? I think some of those are critical and good questions, but you really got to narrow down to what you're there for. And you're there on a very narrow focused platform for 3 to 4 days. And you're going to have people there that are decision makers. I mean, it's a great opportunity. You've got hundreds of people, if not thousands of people, that are in the market maybe for what you're selling. Yeah. And if you went out to try to meet them one-on-one in their locations all over the country or the world, how much money would you spend? It's insane. But if they're all there in one place, you know how to deal with them. And being prepared for that, to me, is probably the most critical aspect of success.
Well, I really like what you're saying. I completely agree with the training, by the way. That's exactly what we preach ourselves. But I think to make it really specific, one of the things that we talk about with Trade Show Makeover with our clients is create your booth as a discovery zone, right? This is not necessarily, it's not that people aren't going to want to learn more about your product or actually be interested in ultimately buying it, but it's not a place to pitch everybody. But in that discovery zone, what an excellent opportunity to weave these questions in that if people have practiced, I mean, do you know how many people just show up and they don't even know what those questions are. They haven't practiced them. And so it's uncomfortable. But
it's true, yeah.
People get comfortable with what it is that how that flows naturally, maybe even a little bit of role playing, God forbid. But that they actually are comfortable and can be very graceful about those conversations, no matter what role they play in their organization.
Yeah, I think it's certainly being comfortable around people is a big part of it. You have good people skills, those types of things. But knowing what to do with those people skills and learning the questions to ask, that's the next step. And sometimes you do need someone to come in and help you craft those questions and walk you through what it takes to do that. How to stand, how to hold your hands, what not to do in the booth. Don't hold a cup of coffee, don't have a phone in your hand. All those things add up to someone walking by and going, they're too busy, I'm going to keep walking. And those little tiny things actually affect how people react to you. And I think that there's a lot more than asking questions, but the questions are important, as is your activity. You don't need a sandwich in the back of the booth because someone's going to see you and go, they're too busy, I'm not going to go there now. So eating in your booth is the biggest no-no of all.
Well, I think too, what sort of surprises some of our clients is that when you're bringing your senior management, especially if you're going to a big show and you're bringing somebody from senior management, to really demonstrate how important this show is to you, they need to be coached too.
They do, yeah.
The questions that they should be asking and the conversations that they could be having. Now, obviously, they're going to participate in setting those kinds of conversations up because it's their company, but don't think that just because they're the senior management that they've already got that figured out. They've got a lot of things on their mind too.
They do, and I think that the senior management are important to be there, certainly, but they may not be the best person to be doing a demonstration or presentation, for instance. You know, maybe they're a better fit on a panel in a pull-aside somewhere. They can speak more naturally to what they do. But in a booth doing a presentation, you want someone there that knows what they're doing. I think a lot of companies hire professional presenters, and that also really pays off. Because it can draw a big crowd many times an hour, many times during the show, and they're entertainers as well as passing out information and explaining things. And of course, the challenge there is you've got to have enough staffers in your booth to handle that crowd that's there and to vet them and talk to them before they get away. So there's a lot more that goes into that. But I've seen that work very effectively as well, having a professional presenter. So that is an activity. A small crowd draws a big crowd, whatever that case may be, whatever you're doing, whether it's an iPad that people are watching a demo or answering a quiz, something like that, something that gets them to interact, something that, gets their hands on. And sometimes I've seen some unusual things in booths over the years that people can come in and interact with. It's a unique thing to do. And that draws people. And again, if you've got 10 people standing there, another 20 people are going to come by because they want to see what's going on.
Yeah, it's attracting. This is really great. So I'm going to take just a minute and pitch a little bit about Trade Show Makeover. So
Good.
One thing that we're offering this month is the opportunity for anyone who's listening to this podcast or watching us on the video cast to go to TradeshowMakeover.com and request a free 30-minute laser coaching session with a Trade Show Makeover expert. So how it works is you request the audit, and then we'll send you a prep form so that we make the absolute most of your time, and we will give you that free 30-minute laser coaching session. So I invite you to go to www.tradeshowmakeover.com and click the button that requests that audit. So go do that after the show. Don't do that now. Time to talk to Tim again. All right, fantastic. So this is, I mean, we're kind of giving all the fire hose information, but
lots of stuff.
And I know, we all say the follow-up's important, and we know the follow-up's important. We know it's important to exercise every day. That doesn't mean that we're going to do it. And I think most people don't do proper follow-up because they don't know what to follow up on, when to follow up, or how to follow up. But one of the things that you've shared with me, Tim, is how you set yourself up to have good follow-up during the show. So talk to me a little bit about some of the key elements to good follow-up that you've seen be really effective.
Well, let's start with the fact that, from what I understand, 80% of leads in the trade show world are not followed up properly. So by simply following through, you're doing better than most of your competitors. And whether that means the leads were not accurately graded, or whether they didn't all get back to the sales group, or whether the sales group has got them, they don't know exactly what information to follow up with. There's a lot of reasons for that. So I always like to go back to the original sales training I took was before you leave any meeting, both parties need to know. There's no, mutual mystification. You've got to know what the next step is on both sides. So what's the follow-up? When is the follow-up? And how does that look? So is it next Tuesday you're going to call up Sally and talk to her about blank, or are you going to send a follow-up email? Are you going to have a scheduled meeting in a month? I mean, what is that follow-up look? And you both need to agree on. I think that's probably the most critical thing before you let that person get away. So you both signed off on it. You both know exactly what's happening. Maybe even pull out your phone and put it in your calendar right then and there. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, well, especially since we're all carrying our phones now, it's very easy. It's like, let's take a look right now.
Yeah.
We've been.
And let me get your phone number while we're here. Yeah, so all of that. So people are. I mean, that's what they're there for. They're there to do business, and so that's very normal. And there's no no wrong answers for that. So.
No, and in fact, I really see that some people are wondering, why didn't they ask for the follow-up? It's so natural that I would want to have this conversation afterwards. So don't be shy about that. So for sort of our last question, I would be really interested to hear, given all of your experience, Tim, what do you believe is the one element of trade show marketing that's underutilized?
Well, again, I think we go back to engagement in a booth. I mean, if there's a 10 booths along an aisle that you're going to walk along, the one that people will stop at is the one where there's something going on there. It doesn't matter what it is. Engagement is very important. I remember, I was just thinking this, when I went to the outdoor retailer back in 2010, nobody knew who GoPro was, right? GoPro is this big company now, but no one knew who they were. But the CEO, the founder of the show, a young man, his name escapes me right now, but he would get up about every hour and he would stand on a table and start yelling at people. And he would say, he would start talking about how great his GoPro was, and he would give one, or he'd give stuff away. And boy, did that draw a crowd. He'd throw stuff out in the crowd. Hundreds of people gathered around him every hour. And I thought, that guy knows how to draw a crowd. And so people were engaged. They wanted to win something, so having a chance to win something is good. And of course, he had videos all throughout the booth showing some of the films that they'd shown they'd captured with their GoPro. So to me, I mean, that was a way to draw people in, and he did it all the time. And I went back hour after hour to see if I could win something. And I don't think I did, but he handed out coupons for like 20% discounts or whatever. And I did remember getting a GoPro on a deal.
Oh my God, it's so funny you mentioned that, because my husband was just at the Microsoft Inspire conference, which is one of these 70, 80,000 conferences, and he won a GoPro. And he brought it home and he gave it to me. So anyway, that's just so serendipitous that we had that conversation. Yeah, that's really fantastic. Like make sure that there's something going on in your booth, because people want to see what is happening if there's something happening. And if there's nothing happening and you're eating a sandwich, then they will cruise on by.
Yeah. Sometimes the best thing to have early on in the day is a pot of coffee.
Right?
Right, so people can come by, and if you've got coffee and a handout, you can have a little conversation while you're making them a cup of coffee, So
that's a great idea.
A very simple one, yeah.
Okay, so you're going to give away a book.
We're going to give away one of these books, and we're going to do it on, what do you say, Twitter? Should we do it on Twitter? Okay, on Twitter.
Although Instagram would work too.
Instagram, I could check both of them. So I'll look for the hashtag TradeshowGuy, hashtag TradeshowGuy, and any comment, like what's your biggest challenge about trade shows? That would be a good question. And we'll give a week or maybe 10 days, and I'll just go paw through and find someone that has used the hashtag TradeshowGuy, and I'll connect with them, and I'll send them a book. How's that sound?
I love it. So what's your Instagram handle and what's your Twitter handle too?
They are both TradeshowGuy.
How smart.
So how smart is that, right?
It's really smart.
So you can follow me, find me there, message me there. But if you use the hashtag TradeshowGuy, that'll know that you're wanting to win the book. And it's like, what's your biggest challenge? So we'll go with that.
I love it. That's perfect. Thank you so much for that generous gift too.
Oh, my pleasure, Diana. Thank you.
All right. So anything that you'd like to say or pitch or
yeah, come on by the blog, TradeshowGuyblog.com, and you'll find the podcast there. It's posted both video and audio every Monday, and a lot of other stuff. I've got 10 years of blog posts there, believe it or not. And my company site is TradeshowGuyExhibits.com. You can see some of the work.
If somebody were going to hire you, they hire you to build their exhibits?
Yep.
And is there sort of a sweet spot of what kind of exhibits that
it's probably the sweet spot are I've done a number of islands, but we do probably more inlines, 10 by 20s, 10 by 30s, 10 by 40s than anything. Some of the clients over the years, Bob's Red Mill, Dave's Killer Bread, Schmidt's Naturals, worked with them for years. Good companies. Natural Products, we have a pretty big footprint there. Although I've got a client or two in the tech industry and in the financial industry. So we're kind of a small boutique company. We pay a lot of attention to our clients. We really want to go the extra mile with them, as it were. They get hands-on attention. They're not going to be lost in the crowd if they're at a big exhibit house.
Good. So if you want to be well cared for with your exhibit build, then you should get a hold of him. All right.
Good. Nice.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been really, really valuable, and we appreciate your time.
My pleasure, and anytime.
All right. Bye.
Bye.